There's so much to talk about here. All right, so we talked about structure, and let's see, what did I have? So we talked about structure before, right? Previous video, different forms. I said I want to be on this improv troupe structure that I like. I want to keep, of course, most of my focus is going to be on my volunteers, but I also want to think about how to get audience more involved. Time to drill down on that structure. I like to have a balance and a rhythm around group individual stuff. And so for me, what I have found works probably the best for me is that I go group, individual, kind of. That's at the broad level, little exceptions here and there. So I've been doing it long enough that what I have found is that for me, it is often best to start out with group because they're fresh. They're not deepened, right? They've just gotten into hypnosis. They've been fractionated a little bit, but they haven't gotten deep into hypnosis. And so there can be a little bit of fear activation potentially that can jog them from hypnosis if you're not careful. In my show, they get hypnotized in the audience, not on stage. I do this for a few reasons, one of which is I feel that for them, feeling like they're part of the crowd makes them feel safer than being on an elevated platform with everyone staring at them. This has borne out very, very well for me over the years. So they get hypnotized in the audience. They've gone through a couple of fractionations, and then I have them forget their name. That's my point of drawing sort of like a line and saying, not literally, figuratively saying, either you can do this or you can't. If you can do it, you get to come on stage. If you can't, you're done for the night. You don't get to be on stage. It's functional from a hypnotic perspective, from a hypnotism perspective, and I do it in a way that's entertaining. So we have them forget their first name, see who it's working for, get those people up on stage. Then I go through, if I've got a really nice group, a big group, then I go through and I get picky and I work on picking who I think are the people that are the most highly hypnotized, the best subjects, weed them out, center them down to a core working group, send the lower hypnotizables back, who are doing great a lot of the time, but I can afford to be picky when the group is big, so I do. So that's your first group thing. And then what I used to do in the old years ago, I would do another group thing after that. But now what I do is more often I go to an individual thing. Then I go to a group thing. Then an individual thing. Then what I often do is another individual thing. I don't have a reason for that. It's just sort of the way it worked out. So I'm going to put it that way because it's kind of what I'm used to, but it could easily change. No, you know what? I'm going to change it for now. We'll just keep the alternating pattern going. Okay? This is how my shows worked for over a decade. Group, individual, group, individual, group, individual. And so what I'm trying to do by structuring it this way is keep everyone absorbed in the experience through the group stuff. If you don't keep everyone absorbed in their hypnotic experience, you risk them drifting up and out. They have to have, in my experience, some level of task orientation that continues to go on, and that task orientation helps them stay in state. If you let them sort of start to feel isolated or alone, or that they don't have your attention, then they just start to wander and drift, and they can come out and pop out. I do group individual. Now, if I just did group all the time, it could work, it could be fine, it could be fun, but what happens when you have a group of people, 6, 10, 15, 20 people on stage, there are always, it's sort of like any kind of mathematical distribution, like a bell curve. There are always some people that are just rock stars. They are outstanding. And then there's other people who are doing okay. And then there's usually a couple who they're duds, really. They're doing great hypnotically. They're just more, either, to be honest, they're personality duds. They don't have any personality. I'm sure they're beautiful human beings. They just don't have a lot of natural creativity that comes out and shines when they're in hypnosis. You can't know that until you've tried to put them through their paces. So that's where, again, group stuff, give them all a task, try to make it as entertaining as you can make it, and then you are sitting back and watching, and you're evaluating. While the audience is just laughing and, having a good time, what you're really doing is you're watching what their exact behavior is, and you're thinking, okay, who's really climbing into this suggestion? Who's really pulling it off and doing it well? And you start to hone down, like, basically, who's going to get more of your attention and who's going to get less of your attention over the show. And that might even mean letting someone go, 35 minutes into the show. And you're like, but if they're not going to really contribute, it's kind of like, why have them there? Now, sometimes I do leave them there because I always love the idea that oftentimes this is their first hypnosis experience. And so if you can just let them have it, that still can be a really positive experience for them. As long as they're not becoming a distraction, sometimes I just leave them there. And I'm like, let them have their experience. Then when they've had it, they'll either go out and evangelize about it and tell more people that it's cool and that they ought to try it, or they'll reflect on it and be like, I've never had anything in my life that's like that. That was really amazing. And then they go to another show in the future. Might be me, probably not. Probably going to be some other hypnotist. And then they're going to be better in that next show because they're more comfortable. They have more faith in their own ability to be hypnotized. I learned this over the years where I would get invited back to the same schools over and over again. I would have students who they would come back year after year because they loved it so much. So I would have students like, I had this one young woman I remember at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire, all 4 years of college. She was in every show for 4 years in a row. She loved it and she was amazing. And why wouldn't I want to have like a rock star, somnambulist hypnosis person in my show? If they do that and they can come back and get better and produce more for you, why wouldn't you want that? Is that going to happen with the people that I was initially describing? Probably not. They're probably not going to go to full-blown rock star, but they could come back the next year if you get invited back, and they could produce more. They could be better. So, very long-winded way of saying, sometimes just letting them stay is, in the bigger picture, a good thing to do. So, we figure out who stays, who goes. We're trying to make it entertaining all the time, right? And then we start testing. The way I think of this is you're testing your instincts, your observations. There's so much to talk about when you do this. Your job is to entertain people. You're always multitasking. So on the one hand, you're trying to put together a group or an individual skit that's truly entertaining for the people in the audience. At the same time, you have to be a good practitioner. You have to be a good craftsperson. And so what you're also doing, I think, if you're operating at a high level, is you're designing these skits with that testing factor in mind. So you're thinking about the complexity of what you're asking them to do. You're thinking about how it's going to give you an ability to observe and show their talent, for lack of a better word. You go from group to individual so that you can highlight a few individuals and start testing. But you need to do it in a way that's entertaining. Then maybe it goes over great, maybe it doesn't. Then you come back to your group. I need to keep everybody focused and involved, task orientation for everybody, and I want to watch again. I'm really repeating my process. I want to watch the whole group. Who's doing great? All right, that one is still doing great. Yeah, that one's okay. That one's definitely a dud at this point. I mean, that's what you're doing in your head is and you're just sitting there and having fun and you're looking happy. But in your mind, again, multitasking, you're doing that evaluating all the time. Then you're going to come through to individual again, and you're going, all right, let's test a couple individuals again. And so to me, it's like a cycle. And as you're doing this, by the time you get to here, the middle of the show, hopefully you've done it well enough. It's all predicated on you putting good people on stage in the first place. So hopefully it all just looks fun and entertaining to the audience. But what you're doing is you're getting a better and better sense of now as you come to the tail end of your show, who you're really going to stick in the spotlight and let them shine. Just totally let them shine and get you to that big, huge audience reaction, amazing stuff. Does that make sense so far? I hope it does. So now, if this is my structure, what I have to think about in my show when it comes to creating content is my show is built around the interactivity of audience polling. So in my show, most hypnotists would go, okay, fine, I need one idea to do with a group, maybe 2 or 3 suggestions I give to individuals, one idea I give to the group, maybe 2 or 3 suggestions I give to individuals, right? And just repeating and repeating. But in my show, I let the audience vote on what they want to have happen on stage. So I've got to have significantly more content options for my show format. It's all my content. I'm prepared for all of it. But it means on the front end of building a whole new show like this, it's quite a bit more front end work. So here, we get them hypnotized in the audience, we get them into amnesia, we find out who the amnesia is working for, and we bring them up on stage, right? Okay, great. Now, we get to first individual. What I traditionally have done is I want to have 3 individuals that I test in the first individual section. So I need 3 volunteers, and that means I need 9 voting points. I like to work in 3s. I think it's a good cognitive unit for people. They handle it very easily. If you give more than 3, their ability to quickly choose goes down. There's research that shows that. The more you go past 3, 2 is obviously very easy. Sometimes I do 2, but I like 3. So if I want to have 3 volunteers that I'm going to give individual suggestions to, that means for the way my show works, a slide is going to go up on the video screen for the first volunteer with 3 choices. The audience votes on the 3 choices. I take the winning one, and then I move on, and now the next volunteer, 3 choices. And again, right? So I've got to have 9 voting points. So I've got to think about 9 possibilities just for this one. Then I come back to group, and I'll have a group scenario, which I'm going to leave that. I'll come back and, well, maybe I'll redo it later. But so a group thing, right? And then again, 3 volunteers, 9 vote points, and down here, 3 volunteers, 9 vote points. So you can see for me, it's 27, just for these 3 individual segments, 27 ideas I have to come up with, just for those 3 segments. Then I've got to have, in these group sessions, I do it in the group sessions as well. I do 2 to 3 vote points for each of those. The final group is 2 vote points. It's a way that I wrap things up where the audience just gets to choose. Do you want A or do you want B? So, for this new show that I'm building, this is already set. This is how I get them up. I've got to come up with 27 individual hypnosis suggestion options. And I've got to come up with, let's say, 3, 6, 8 group options to vote on. 27, 8, 35 scenarios to build. Let's get to it.